What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, I'm going to be talking about X-Men Red number 8 by Al Ewing and Matabek Musibekov. And the main focus here being Abigail Brand finally revealing why she's working with both mutants and Orcus and how deep her deceptions actually go, as well as why she was so interested in Vulcan, as well as why this makes her the perfect X-Men villain, but at the same time, the hero of the galaxy.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie, and make it look easy.
Okay, so last time we left off on Sword number 7, Cable and WizKid had gotten a hold of some of Abigail Brand's secret documents that she keeps in place that allow her to know what all she's accomplished so far and where exactly it is that she's aiming her ambitions if and when she gets killed and is resurrected. Cable and WizKid were able to piggyback her signal and see everything that she was seeing when she saw it. So now everything that Abigail Brand knows, for the most part, Cable and WizKid know. And Cable has had his suspicions for quite some time, ever since the young version of Cable had left and went back to his timeline and old man Cable was brought back into the present. But he never really knew exactly what it was he should be looking for. He just knew that Abigail Brand was up to something. Now, a lot of the things that Cable and WizKid have learned, they're all things that we, the reader, have already known since Sword number 11 in 2020. However, we never really knew the context behind a lot of the things that Abigail was doing because, well, only Abigail knew. We've known that she's been working with Orcus and likely her involvement in the death of then Alpha Flight director and Orcus pedal Henry Peter Gyrick, but now that Cable has hard confirmation on this, he's organizing a team to investigate her notes, some of which reveal her business dealings with Orbis Stellaris, who's recently made themselves a key figure not only in galactic relations, but the premier weapons dealer in the known galaxy. But there's something more sinister going on here. We learned this issue exactly what Abigail has been plotting. She's been working with Orcus since after Sword number 11, but it was always implied this wasn't her endgame. We knew she wanted Cable's techno-organic virus for one reason or another, likely as her bargaining chip to get her in with Orcus. But that seems like it's not exactly the case, because we learned in this issue that the person she gave it to wasn't Orcus, but Orbis Stellaris. Either way, Brand is merely using Orcus, same as she's been using Krakoa, and ends to justify the means situation. Everything Krakoa has done as far as terraforming Mars, turning it into the new planet Arakko, putting the Iraqi mutants there, all of that was a measured plan on her part. The Mysterium that was discovered in Al Ewing's Sword number 1 was yet another, and we never explicitly knew why any of this was happening because Abigail was playing my favorite game, long-term booking. She needed mutants for one thing and one thing only, to prop up the Sol system as the legitimate power in the universe, to make all other planets, societies, and entities across the galaxy put respect on the name of the Sol system, and the best way to do that was to make it look powerful. The mutants creating the most powerful planet in the galaxy was a major part of it, but we often overlook the Mysterium, and largely because it's yet another shiny rock amidst a bunch of other shiny rocks in the Marvel Comics universe, like Vibranium, Uru, Adamantium, Carbonadium. There's all sorts of crazy shiny rocks in the Marvel Comics universe. We're not short on them by any stretch of the imagination, so why should Mysterium be any different? The reason why is because we've learned that this is not only just a very powerful material that can be used to create, obviously, some of the most powerful weapons in the galaxy, but we've also learned it's a very strong conductor of magic in previous issues. But that's not why Abigail Brand wanted that shiny rock. Since the world is at peace following the Kree-Skrull War, that means an economic collapse is sure to follow due to a massive shutdown in war profiteering, and also thanks to a new empire still trying to find its footing. This leaves an opening for a new currency, that being Mysterium, to come in, one that can only come from one place, and that is the Sol system. No one else has access to the Mysterium, making the entire galaxy reliant on it as the new standard form of currency in all the galaxy. And with Arakko set up as the hub of all things galactic, this makes Sol one of, if not the most important systems in all of the universe. I mean, think about it. If anyone in the galaxy wants to print money, they have to come to the Bank of Sol. That is a huge flex. No one else is printing their own money, so they have to get it from the one place you can get it. It's smart business. But after this, things take a little bit of a dark turn. Because now that Abigail Brand has set up the Sol system to be the major component in the galaxy, she now needs just a little bit more of a spark to ignite the inferno inside of the forge of her ideas. You see, this is where we start getting into the progenitors. The progenitors are an Al Ewing creation that goes back to his 2017 issue of Royals number 5. They're a race of beings who live on the edge of the universe in a system called the World Farm, and their main claim to fame was experimenting on the Kree back in the day, making them what they are now. We've also seen the progenitors recently in X-Men Red number 3, but these were a fabrication by Orbis Stellaris, and it's largely implied that maybe the progenitors we've already seen could very well potentially be a fabrication of Orbis Stellaris. And if these progenitors we see this issue look familiar, it's because we first saw them in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men number 10 in 2020. The very same mysterious beings we saw discover Vulcan, fresh off getting his cheeks clapped during War of Kings, lost in the Fault. Since then, the mystery has always been, is this the real Vulcan or a resurrected clone? Is the true Vulcan the one we see trapped by these mysterious aliens, and this other Vulcan we see on Krakoa is an imposter? Why is Vulcan acting so weird? He seems so quotey fingers happy and affable now. He's nothing like Emperor Vulcan, and we'd later learn in Al Ewing's X-Men Red number 2, this is in fact the original recipe Vulcan, but he's been twisted and broken down and recreated to the point where now he's a ticking time bomb. He's been hallucinating his former allies and friends, Petra and Sway, who have been dead ever since Deadly Genesis, and he subconsciously has turned them into apparitions even other people can interact with, but they're not real. They've been convincing him to stay drunk to keep him pacified, and Abigail Brand has been slowly goading Vulcan to become the Emperor once more, and that was all thanks to Orbis Stellaris, who's fabricated these progenitors, and very likely Orbis Stellaris is the one who technically, at least by proxy, reprogrammed Vulcan, meaning Abigail Brand has been hatching the scheme for quite a long time, as most of her plans call back to comics Al Ewing has written since his time being at Marvel, not just with the X-Men, but also his run on Guardians of the Galaxy through 2020 and 2021. Largely stuff regarding the Snark War mentioned in his Sword series. The reason why Abigail was trying to trick Vulcan into getting involved in all her X-Men chicanery on Mars was for a very specific reason. She tricked him into participating in a fight to the death in the Great Ring of Arakko against Tarn the Uncaring, knowing full well he'd likely lose, and this was all on purpose, not to get him out of the way, but to trigger something within him. His being resurrected undid the programming the progenitors and, once again, Orbis Stellaris did to him, turning him back into Emperor Vulcan, his default state, and now she plans to use him as a weapon against the universe to wage war. With Vulcan back, he's already been calling himself the true ruler of the Shi'ar Empire again, even before dying and being resurrected and breaking that reprogramming. He's poised to kill Empress Xandra or otherwise be killed in the process of attempting a coup. This is gonna lead to war, and not just between rival Shi'ar factions, because trust me, there are very likely people among the Shi'ar who still rep for Vulcan, even if it's behind closed doors. But this is also going to lead them into direct conflict with the Kree Skrull Empire. And this is all thanks to Abigail finding information on the 10 shames of the Shi'ar, most of which are still unknown, and leaking them to the Kree Skrull Empire. We learned in Steve Orlando's Marauders that a couple of the 10 shames are directly related to how the Shi'ar attempted to slaughter the original mutants of Earth billions of years ago and kept some of them locked away in a form of stasis, but also how they'd experimented on symbiotes from the Clintar and turned them into manufactured weapons known as wet skins that function much like a Green Lantern ring from DC Comics, creating and becoming whatever their wielder desires. Now we learn another truth about the shames of the Shi'ar, that when the Kree attacked a Skrull planet, supposedly making secret weapons to kill the Kree, it was actually a hospital outpost to help Skrulls who lost the ability to shape change, something that was called Project Shapeless Ridge. But what's worse is the Kree were fed false information, and that's what led to the attack. And now the Kree Skrull Empire know that it was the Shi'ar Empire who fed the Kree that information. And while the Kree Skrull Empire, especially the Skrull part of that Kree Skrull Empire, want reparations, and namely reparations in blood for this act of deception, Xandra is actually willing to pay it, only maybe not exactly in the way that Pybok and the rest of the Skrulls of the Kree Skrull Empire would want. But we never get to learn exactly what it is that Xandra is offering or is going to offer to the Kree Skrull Empire as restitution paid, because this is when Vulcan inserts himself into the conversation, declaring himself as the still ruler of the Shi'ar Empire. This is going to lead to a war unlike anything the Marvel Comics universe has seen in quite some time, because not only are we talking about war between two rival Shi'ar factions, but both of these factions are also going to have to fight off the Kree Skrull Empire potentially, because they're gonna want blood for this. There's no way to get around it. A peaceful Skrull settlement was virtually wiped off the face of the universe by the Kree because the Shi'ar told a lie. And they're not going to care which side of the Shi'ar they take out. They're just going to want to take out any Shi'ar. Doesn't matter who. And it's not just the Shi'ar and the Kree Skrull Empire that are going to be involved in this, because we're very likely going to see whatever is left of the Nova Corps get involved in this. We're also going to potentially see the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Celestials, and many others get involved in this to some degree or another. People are going to be taking sides on this in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But the one Brand wants involved more than anybody else is the X-Men. She wants to use them as frontline soldiers and mediators to get the Shi'ar into the negotiations. Likely, this is a way to put Xandra and Vulcan on some path towards settling things via an arranged marriage if both sides don't kill each other first. And the reason why I'm going to an arranged marriage here is not something that Abigail Brand specifically says. This isn't something she actually mentions as her endgame. But when you think about bringing two sides together, two rival factions of a kingdom, and you have one side who claims he is the true king who is never uncrowned or dethroned, and you have Xandra who has been declared as the empress of the Shi'ar in the wake of his absence, it's not that hard to imagine that that's probably what's on the horizon. Putting them together would actually unify the Shi'ar in ways that I don't think we can actually even quantify right now. But regardless of all that, Abigail knows the X-Men are going to be in for a penny, in for a pound on this, because they are going to feel guilty because they are the ones who brought Vulcan back. And with Vulcan starting this war, this is what's going to obligate them, or maybe Abigail Brand believes this will obligate them to get involved. And if the X-Men are seen being the ones who orchestrated a union between rival Shi'ar factions, as well as helping end a war between the Shi'ar Empire and the Kree Skrull Empire, and maybe, who knows, potentially making them allies after all of this, this would set up the Sol system to look like the most powerful system in all the galaxy, because they made it happen. Now, on the flip side of this, she also kind of wants to clear out Arakko, get all of its Iraqi inhabitants off of it, because she wants to use the newly reformed planet Arakko as the new global Sword base. And this is all in an effort to turn Sword into something that S.H.I.E.L.D. never really exactly became, and something that Sword was never ever allowed to be, because Abigail plans to fold Orchis into the new planetary sword base, which is already interesting considering that Orcus is made up of remnants of both S.H.I.E.L.D. as well as SWORD, AIM, and various other organizations in the Marvel Comics universe. Folding them in is going to be a very interesting task for her because the trick is, are they going to want to be folded into it? And more or less, is anyone going to actually buy that this is for a good reason? We do know that Orcus has seen a huge uptick in public perception thanks to their participating in the event of Judgment Day. The world sees Orcus as heroes now. The mutants aren't going to be crazy about it, but the rest of humanity, they're not going to care. People are wearing Orcus t-shirts and carrying around balloons made to look like Nimrod. They are going to sign on for this hook, line, and sinker. And not only is Abigail going to do that, she's going to reach into Fury's contacts, both junior and senior, to get all of Earth's mightiest heroes on board. The Avengers, the Defenders, the Fantastic Four, the Guardians of the Galaxy, everybody is going to get brought in on this. And if everyone comes together and plays nice, this could turn SWORD into the very thing that Abigail has always felt SWORD should be. The thing she felt SWORD should have always been from the jump. And now not only will she have a new sword, SWORD could be both the sword and the shield that could protect the entire galaxy. If she accomplishes this, Abigail Brand would have saved the entire galaxy. And it would all be thanks to her, even if no one really truly knows it. And even if they don't, she's still at the center of it. This would lead to her keeping her promise that she made in the aftermath of Al Ewing's empire, that she was going to build something better than Alpha Flight, that she was going to create the perfect system, one that can shut down issues before they can become problems. And honestly, the reasoning that she has behind this is very easy to suss out. If you go back and read Empire Aftermath Avengers #1, it's in this where she actually slaps the taste out of Captain Marvel's mouth because Captain Marvel and the rest of the Avengers didn't clue her in on what was going on with the Kotati during Empire, that they had taken over an entire moon and turned out that they were actually enemies of Earth. The Avengers just simply believed they were the good guys and they never clued anybody else in on what was going on, and Abigail took this as a slap in the face, very much like the slap in the face that she gave to Carol. Abigail felt like Alpha Flight was being treated as an afterthought, that they weren't being brought in on anything, and countless people died because the Avengers felt that they made the best call. As she says before everybody at the reception of the formation of the Kree Skrull Empire, she says that 7 people decided the fate of the world around a campfire. That if Alpha Flight is an afterthought, it can't work. It's useless, and I have better things to do with my time. And we later discovered that when all the sword stuff was going on, Abigail Brand was working behind the scenes, organizing things to try to create the best galactic climate humanly possible. That's why she was one of the main instigators of the Snark War during both Al Ewing's sword and his Guardians of the Galaxy. She completely deposed entire galactic governments to put the people in place that she wanted, who were the most malleable, who she could manipulate and get everything the way she wanted it to be. And it was all thanks to this. Even the stuff going on with the Last Annihilation, also in Al Ewing's Guardians of the Galaxy, when the Kree Skrull Empire got their cheeks clapped by Dormammu and his mindless ones. Abigail Brand orchestrated events so that no one else from Earth or any of the Kree Skrull Empire's other allies could get communications coming in or coming out. That way, when SWORD showed up to save the day, Hulkling, who is the emperor of the Kree Skrull Empire, he would have no other choice than to view SWORD, as well as the mutants, as his allies. Abigail has been working the longest of long cons here, and honestly, I think this is fantastic. Is she acting in very villainous ways? Yes, she is definitely working in villainous ways, and a lot of the things she's doing are in direct opposition of the mutants who she claims to be allies with. But at the same time, a lot of what she's doing is in direct opposition of Orcus, because Orcus is a human-first organization. Abigail doesn't really give a damn about humanity on that level. She cares about planetary protection, not just Earth's protection. So Orcus is going to wind up getting screwed out of this in the long run. Now, how is she going to manipulate things at Orcus to make it where she's the one in charge that can make those kind of calls to absorb Orcus in? I'm pretty sure she's already thought of that too. She can bring in Orcus, get them in the positions that she wants them in, and then just slowly get them out of the scenario and completely wipe them out of the equation. Or she could keep them and just make them useful idiots. Who knows? I don't know how that's going to play out, but it's going to play out sooner rather than later, and very likely when we start getting into Fall of X and, further along in Al Ewing's X-Men Red, I'm sure we'll figure out more. I know the next issue is definitely going to be leaning very heavily into this, issues 9 and 10 most certainly, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. But I like a lot of what we got in this issue. It is fantastic. I also like that they brought over Weaponless Jen from the Legion of X series, and even kind of shown some similarities between herself and even Cable and Wolverine. There was some pretty cool stuff in there. But anyways, if you want to know more about how Abigail Brand has been acting a whole monkey and moving and pulling strings behind the scenes, check out this playlist right here. In the meantime, let me know what you thought about X-Men Red number 8. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.